Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are around the world, and welcome back to Into the Deck. My name is Manuel, I'm your host here on the show. This time we talk about Pioneer, blue-white control, mulligan decisions, and I have the pleasure to have here, once again, Tobias Mieth. Welcome back.
Hey, everyone.
Nice to have you here once again. And nice to talk about Pioneer again.
Such a good format.
Such a good format, yeah, absolutely. And most of all, mulligans, because mulligan is really, really crucial in Magic. Mm-hmm. Decisions, they are really important. This one and sideboarding, I think they are like the most difficult things in the game at all.
Yeah, they come up plenty, especially with the new mulligan rule. You're incentivized to mulligan even more than before. And it comes up like all the time. Even decks who benefit from regular mulligans tend to be more successful than others at the moment. So that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Mulligans are pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, blue-white control. Yeah. This is the list that you're currently playing at the moment. We have it now on screen. I'm just showing it because what we're going to discuss in this episode is going to revolve around the list you play, of course, so your mulligan decisions and everything. So here it is. The mulligans that we selected, the decisions that you made are based on some matches that you played in a Liga a few days ago?
It wasn't a league. It was a preliminary event.
Sorry.
A preliminary event on Magic Online. Just a 5-match event. Unfortunately, I started 0-2. But then we were talking about recording our next recording session. And then you asked me if I could provide some sample hands. And I took that as motivation to win the next 3 matches.
I'm glad I was somehow encouraging and like giving you, the will and the power to overcome your opponents in the later rounds of the event.
Honestly, I was about to drop, but then I got some prizes, so that's fine.
That's cool. So let's talk about this stuff then. And I would start with match number 3, game 1 versus unknown opponent.
Yeah.
The hand that you had is a cast out, approach of the second sun, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Island, Absorb, Azorius Charm. Your opponent took a mulligan, and you decided to do the same.
If you take a look at that hand, there's just one land. We are a control deck. We need a lot of lands in play. We don't have any opts to accompany that, to draw out of that drought. So,
Self-explanatory. Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at hand number 2. We have a Field of Ruin, Dig Through Time, Plains, 2 Azorius Charm, 1 Approach of the Second Sun, and Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Mm-hmm. Opponent kept on 6.
Yes.
And you instead mulliganed again.
Yeah, we needed to mulligan again here. Here we had 2 lands. However, these lands were, one was colorless and the other was white, so semi-colorless more or less in the deck, because if you need to shape your hand, you need like blue lands to cast opts, to cast Azorius Charms, to draw a card with Little Teferi, whatever. So we don't have a blue source here, so it's highly unlikely that we get somewhere if we don't draw like the cards we need anyway. So it's better to ship it, because if you get like a good curve with 5 cards, that's better than hoping to draw the lands you need to have like some Azorius Charms active. Then you could play, besides that you couldn't play anything, because Approach is like a late game spell you don't need in your starting hand anyways. Teferi is a 5-mana play. Dig Through Time needs some setup, and the other 2 cards you could play are 2 Azorius Charms, and doesn't sound too too likely that you get somewhere with that.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't draw the blue source in the next 2 turns, and you're basically done. Okay, so mulligan again. We go with hand number 3, 2 Island, Opt, Teferi, Time Raveler, Search for Azcanta, Azorius Charm, and Supreme Verdict.
Mm-hmm. So that hand I kept because we have 2 lands here, which are both blue. That's a bit unfortunate for our white spells in that hand. However, we have a Opt and Search for Azcanta, which help us shape our hand for further turns to come. As the opponent was still unknown to us, we had to think about what to bin here. Supreme Verdict with just 2 blue lands in hand so far is pretty far off from being cast. at the moment. In some matchups, it's pretty good, especially if you take a mulligan, because it's more or less like a reset button where you can get back some card advantage. However, you don't know what you're playing against, so I wouldn't gamble on that. And then the more or less the same goes for the Azorius Charm. I would rather keep the Teferi Time Raveler because it's good in multiple matchups, where in other matchups, the best or the upside of Azorius Charm as a removal spell is that you can cycle it in matchups where removal spells are bad. So I just put back onto the bottom of my deck the Azorius Charm and the Supreme Verdict here, because these are the cards we don't need. And with that hand, we have actually a quite nice curve, because on turn 1, I played Opt. On turn 2, I played Search for Azcanta. And on turn 3, I could play a Teferi Time Raveler. And in the end, that nice curve brought me to a win in that game 1, which was against a green ramp deck. In that match, as far as I remember, I beat multiple Ulamogs, but I had so much card advantage at that time that it didn't really matter that they always exiled like two threats every turn. I once even bounced it with like the small Teferi because I didn't want to get hit by it. So they could recast it, exile another 2 lands, but I managed to win that.
All right. So let's go for game number 2 then. We have it right here. You were on the draw again, of course, and because you won game 1. And your hand was Search for Azcanta, 2 Ether Gust, Cast Out, Teferi Time Raveler, Plains, and Glacial Fortress.
Yeah.
Your opponent took a mulligan, and you decided to keep.
Yes. I think that hand is quite good because with 2 Ether Gusts, we have 2 relatively good counters, well, not really counter spells, like semi-time walks, whatever you would like to call it.
Card,
Yeah, it's a good sideboard card in that matchup. We have 2 lands, we can cast them, we can cast our Search for Azcanta. We can hopefully cast our Teferi on turn 3. We have a cast out for any shenanigans. We could even cycle cast out. So something which can shape up quite easily to a good hand here. So I would always keep a hand like that. That's fine. Unfortunately, we lost because we didn't manage to draw our 3rd land until turn 4 or 5. And from then on, we had to play catch up with Ether Gusts, and then somehow, the colorless spells started raining on us with World Breakers. And
Yeah, well, that's not related to the hand. So,
no,
I mean,
it's not really related
keeping
to
it
the
was
hand.
correct.
But the keep was always correct. We were a bit unlucky, but that happens.
That happened, that can happen, absolutely. So, game number 3. Your hand on the play, Hallowed Fountain, Castle Ardenvale, Ixalan's Binding, Plains, Azorius Charm, Glacial Fortress, and Teferi, Hero of Dominaria.
Yes.
And that's a keep.
Yeah, that was definitely a keep. It's not like the best hand because we don't have much to shape our hand in the beginning. However, we already have enough lands and colored lands to cast all our spells in our deck. We just need a 5th land to play our Teferi in hand. And the Ixalan's Binding is quite nice when you want to deal with their cast trigger stuff like Ulamog or Worldbreaker. So I gladly would keep that hand in that matchup anytime. It's not like the best hand, but it's fine.
Okay. Very, very clear. So in the end, the result was positive.
Yeah.
You won the game and you also won the match.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk about match number 5. Because here there are also quite interesting decisions. Let's have a look at it. Now, game 1, unknown opponent, of course. You were again on the draw, and your opening hand was Supreme Verdict, Plains, Hallowed Fountain, Absorbed, Castle Vantress, Azorius Charm, and again, Hallowed Fountain. You have 2.
Yeah, 2 Hallowed Fountains.
I forgot actually to put them
fine.
together. Yeah, totally fine. Okay, so your opponent kept, and you decided to do the same.
That hand is quite okay because we have 4 lands. Still, we meet all our color requirements. So we can cast it Absorb on turn 3, which you want to do. Against creature-based decks, it's really good that we have that Supreme Verdict and that Azorius Charm. And after the keep, we were lucky with that because our opponent turned out to be a creature-based deck. We were playing against black vampires, and with that hand, could easily snatch a win there. Yeah.
Okay, but you would keep these kind of hands also
Against unknown opponents
anything.
anytime. Yeah. Because what is always pretty important, we talked about that in the other video already. You want to make your land drops as a control deck, and for the first 4 turns, we are safe here with land drops, so that's quite good. So we can at least cast until up to our Supreme Verdict, so we can cast almost all the spells in our deck, except for like Dig Through Time, which needs some setup, or Approach, which is late game card. Yeah. So
all right.
This is a totally fine hand.
Okay, so game number 2. Now you know it's a mono black vampire, as I said. And your hand on the draw, 2 Glacial Fortress, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Field of Ruin, Plains, Teferi, Time Raveler, and Island. Your opponent took a mulligan, and you decided to do the same.
Yes, this was a close one, but if you take a look at this hand, this has just 2 spells. The rest is like lands, and one of the spells is the small Teferi, the other one is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, the big one. So in an aggro matchup, having a 5-drop in hand is like doing nothing for sometimes even before you die. So just banking on one spell to cast, to contain them, it's not like the best. You could do that, maybe your hand shapes up well, but that's a bit too much of a gamble for me.
Okay, so at the first glance, it could look okay, but actually it's not that safe.
As you know the matchup by now, and you know that you're playing against an aggro deck, you should be pretty sure that this hand is not okay, because you need a lot of cheap interaction early on, and you have just 1 cheap interaction spell in hand. The rest is just lands and a 5-mana spell.
Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So you took a mulligan, and hand number 2, to absorb 2 Island, Blessed Alliance, Glacial Fortress, and Castle Ardenvale. Your opponent kept 7 cards, and you decided to keep as well.
Yeah. This is more or less a perfect hand. Yeah, not really perfect, but really acceptable hand against an aggro deck, because you have cheap interaction with Blessed Alliance, and you have the Absorbs. The Absorbs are pretty good in these kinds of matchups, because sometimes against aggro decks you have the problem that their threats slip under your counter spells. However, with these counter spells, when you counter something, you regain some life, so that helps you to set up for the late game as well. The problem of the hand is that Blessed Alliance is not like the best interaction spell against mono black vampires, because they have like a lot of weenie buddies which are disposable, like Dust Legion Zealot, for example, which draws a card when it comes into play, and then it's just like a small body, and they can easily sack it to your Blessed Alliance. So that's like one of the downsides for that hand, but besides that, it's totally fine. We have 4 lands in hand. We can even ship one of these lands when we keep the hand, because we took a mulligan already, so we need to put one back. And this is one of the islands, because then you have like double white, double blue on turn 3, so you can cast your Absorbs. The one thing you have to do here is then play on turn 1 the Castle Ardenvale tapped. That's pretty important, because neither Glacial Fortress nor Island allow you to play Castle Ardenvale untapped, so play it on turn 1, and then you're fine for the rest.
That's important, actually, to remember this. Otherwise, then
sequencing.
The sequencing is really important here. Otherwise, you don't have the mana you need when you need it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so game number 3, as we said before, you were on the play, and your hand was Supreme Verdict, 2 Opt, Castle Ardenvale, Azorius Charm, Glacial Fortress, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria.
So our opponent, we decided to keep. Our opponent also kept 7 cards. Why we kept this hand is, well, we have good, cheap interaction in Azorius Charm. We have Supreme Verdict, which is a pretty important card in that matchup, because when they dump a lot of small creatures onto the board, a sweeper is always what you want to clean that mess up. And then we had the big Teferi, which is a little bit of like a liability for that hand. However, it gives you a plan for later, because when you have managed to contain the board, you have to do something with that situation. And the best, if you played a Verdict on 4, is to follow it up with a Teferi on 5. Especially if you can keep the Azorius Charm until then. Because what you can do is, it's pretty neat with Teferi, you draw a card, untap 2 lands, and have Azorius Charm up, so when they want to attack down your Planeswalker, you can foil their plans pretty easily. One of the problems about that hand is the land situation, because both are tap lands, because they don't combo pretty well Castle Ardenvale, which we even heard in the last hand we discussed. The Glacial Fortress. So what we need to do here is to start with the Glacial Fortress, actually, so that we on turn 2 can play Opt. Because we don't actually need to Azorius Charm on turn 2, we can do that later. I even managed to keep the Azorius Charm until after the Verdict, when I dropped the Teferi to protect the Teferi, which was more or less the plan already when I saw that hand. So my plan was, get to 4 lands on turn 4, sweep, hopefully draw your 5th land to play Teferi with Azorius Charm, and from then on, try to play your control plan and win.
Sure, and win the game, absolutely, which actually happened in the end, because this is what was the outcome. All right, okay, so this is it for the hands that we selected actually for this episode. And thank you very, very much, Tobias. Was really nice actually to do this kind of recording, this kind of video for the first time. And a big thank you to all of you for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel, and also let us know your thoughts in the comment section, especially because this is a new type of video. So we would like to know actually if you would like to see more of this stuff. So please let us know what you think. All right, everybody, have a great time. Cast your favorite spells.
And take care, everyone.
And for now, it's goodbye.